Think beyond the standard lateral raise. Build monstrous delts with the 5 exercises few people do, but most people need. These lifts, demonstrated by strength coach Eric Bach, will build your shoulders wide and capped.
The single arm behind the back cable lateral raise takes that medial head through a fully strength lengthened position and gets a maximal contraction in the scapular plane. Remember, if we want to maximally hit our delts, it's not just coming out to the side, it's slightly out in the front. And so what a lot of people do is they just do these directly behind their body in this fashion, but they're staying most likely in the frontal plane. In the scapular plane, if we can do that directly with a cable, it's going to be better. So in order to do this correctly, we actually want to step with the cable or the functional trainer directly behind us. And now, as I'm braced, I'm going to come up and it's going to look more like a forward raise, but the reality is I'm actually in the scapular plane, which allows us to have a greater stretch and more tension because we have that constant tension of the cable all the way through the lateral raise. And we always want to pause at the very top and control the eccentric. One of the biggest issues that most lifters have is they completely ignore pausing, flexing, and controlling that range all the way through that eccentric. All right, so simple and straightforward. Obviously hit one side and then grab the other. The Dumbbell Y-Raise is an incredible exercise for firing up the medial delt. Specifically, when we're in that shortened position, creating that Y with our arms and with our torso, that is where we're going to have that peak muscular contraction going on. Because we have the bench, we're going to have more external stability provided to avoid a lot of the cheating that goes on when most people are using different forms of a lateral raise or attempting to hit that medial delt. Take it a little bit further, you can make this exercise more difficult, of course, by adjusting the weight and the load, but also by flattening out the bench and changing the leverage that you have directly in the exercise. Here's what it looks like. The cable Y-Raise is obviously similar to the dumbbell Y-Raise, except with the cables we have consistent tension all the way through, and of course a lot of tension at the very top peak shortened position on that medial delt. One thing we don't have is we don't have the bench when we're doing this, so there's not that external stability. However, because of the cables, we make up for that difference with consistent tension all the way throughout the movement. And so the way that we set this up, we cross the cables over. Because the cables themselves, when we pull, it goes more in line with that natural direction and orientation of the muscle fibers. And so we like to get a little bit of a tension directly in the bottom, and then we're coming up, creating that Y position, and controlling all the way through that movement. And you can create a bit more tension in this exercise by stepping away from that cable a bit further, or you can obviously just manipulate the load and the tempo of the exercise. The cable wrist height lateral raise allows us to train many of the same benefits you would have with a typical lateral raise. However, we're actually going to bias this towards being heavier at the end range of motion at the top, whereas a low range puts us in a different lengthened position. Because of this, we can go a little bit heavier with this variation, and this sets up an incredible superset if you want to go with a wrist height cable lateral raise versus a low pulley. Here is what the wrist height example looks like. As you can see, my hands are much higher in this case than usual. Again, we want to hold that peak contraction. The dumbbell lean away lateral raise is a great exercise because we adjust that body angle, we can lean away, increase the range of motion, and go a little bit heavier than we would on a typical lateral raise. Because of this, because we're able to go heavier and we have a bit of a cheat built into the exercise itself, we can tap into some of those high threshold motor units that otherwise are not stimulated on a typical lateral raise. One of my favorite ways to use this exercise is as part of a mechanical advantage drop set. You would do something like a lean away lateral raise, followed by a L lateral raise, followed by a seated lateral raise with descending loading each and every single time. That allows us to create a ton of mechanical tension and then more metabolic stress and fatigue directly built in to really build that medial delt and, of course, getting an insane pump. Now, when I'm doing the lean away lateral raise, again, I'll go a little bit heavier because many times what I'll do is I will really overly accentuate that eccentric tension. So I'm just holding onto a functional trainer. You can grab onto a squat rack, whatever works for you. Leaning away, and then come right up to the side, and then pause. Just control. Generally speaking, you could probably go 20% heavier on a lean away lateral raise than you would on a typical lateral raise in order to get that overload stimulus that we're looking for.
If you enjoyed this information, hit that like button to let us know. Plus, if you never want to miss another T Nation video again, hit subscribe and that little notification bell right next to it.